The fluorescent lights buzzed above me like angry wasps. Trent Walsh slid a thin folder across his desk, his eyes fixed somewhere over my left shoulder. Not at me. Never at me. We're denying your claim, Ryan, he said flatly. Pre-existing condition. Not covered under your plan. My throat went dry. Emma's surgery had cost $78,000. I'd checked the coverage twice before scheduling it. Premium family plan. Everything was supposed to be covered. That's wrong, I managed. I pay $400 a month for this insurance. Trent's jaw tightened. He glanced toward the door like he wanted to escape. You should have read the fine print more carefully. The words landed like a fist to my stomach. Down the hall, someone laughed. Coffee machines hummed. Business as usual at Redline Logistics. I stared at the rejection letter. Our company logo stared back, bold and bright above the words that might as well have been a death sentence. Redline Logistics. Family first. Always. That's when I understood. They didn't care if my wife lived or died. She was just a line item they could erase. The hospital called that morning while I sat in my car. They were holding the bill for now, the woman said, her voice professionally sympathetic. But they'd need payment soon. $78,420. I drove home in silence, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Emma was on the couch, still pale from the surgery, a blanket pulled up to her chin. She smiled when I walked in. How'd it go? She asked. Fine, I lied. All handled. That night, I sat beside her while she slept. The medical equipment beeped softly in the darkness. I whispered the promise into the quiet room. I'll fix this. But I had no idea how. Not yet. I was just an operations analyst who stayed late to help with spreadsheets. Nobody important. Nobody who mattered. That would change. I couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m, I pulled out my laptop and opened every document I had. Pay stubs. Insurance forms. Benefits enrollment emails from when I'd started 6 years ago. The denial letter sat beside me, already wrinkled from being read too many times. Employee error in coverage selection. Employee error. They were blaming me for their lie. I clicked through old emails until I found it. The original benefits package. Premium family coverage. No mention of pre-existing condition exclusions. Nothing about dependent restrictions. They'd changed the terms. After Emma got sick. After we'd filed the claim. My hands shook as I took screenshots. Something dark and cold settled in my chest. Not anger exactly. Something sharper. Something that knew how to wait. The company I worked for had just made a terrible mistake. They'd denied my healthcare claim, hanging my wife's life on a technicality they'd invented. What they didn't know was that I'd spent 6 years watching how this place really worked. My name is Ryan Alden. 34 years old. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. I am an operations analyst at Redline Logistics for 6 years. I'm the guy who arrives early and leaves late. The one who fixes broken reports at midnight and never asks for credit. I've trained 14 new hires. Covered for sick managers. Stayed loyal while others jumped ship for better offers. I believe the family-first speeches. The town halls where CEO Douglas Kearney talked about values and integrity. The company cookouts where CFO Valerie Penn smiled and pretended to care. I'd seen things over the years. Quiet firings. Performance reviews that didn't match reality. Budget cuts that somehow never touched executive bonuses. But I'd kept my head down. That's what you do when you need the job. When my wife needed help, I'd trusted the system. Trusted the benefits I'd earned. They'd betrayed that trust. Used paperwork and fine print to abandon us. I just didn't know yet that their lie would become their destruction. I went back to HR the next day. Trent was eating lunch at his desk, a sad sandwich from the vending machine. "We need to talk about my claim," I said, closing the door. He set down the sandwich. "Ryan, I told you. It's corporate policy. There's nothing I can. You approved my coverage when I joined. You personally walked me through the benefits." His face went pale. "That was 6 years ago. Policies change. Not retroactively. Not after someone gets sick." Trent stood up, lowering his voice. "Look, man. Valerie signs off on all claims now. All of them. You're not going to win this fight. Valerie Penn. The CFO. I'd seen her cut budgets and fire people with the same cold smile. So that's it? I asked. She just decides who gets help and who doesn't. Trent's silence was my answer. I walked out of his office and something fundamental shifted inside me. I stopped asking for help. Started planning something else entirely. By lunch, everyone knew. The break room went quiet when I walked in. Someone whispered, "Insurance problems," behind my back. Douglas Kearney called me into his office at 2 o'clock. He sat behind his massive desk, all expensive suit and practiced concern. "Ryan, I heard you're making waves with HR. That's not productive." I stayed standing. "I'm just trying to understand why my approved coverage suddenly doesn't exist." His smile was cold. "Let the professionals handle it. You don't want to be that guy. The one who causes problems. The guy who expects the company to keep its promises." The smile vanished. "Exactly that guy. Those guys don't last long here." The threat hung in the air between us. I nodded once and left, my mind already working. If they wanted to play games with paperwork, I'd learn their game. And I'd play it better. That night, I waited until the cleaning crew finished and the office emptied. My badge still worked for after-hours access. Nobody questioned the loyal analyst working late again. The HR archive room was in the basement. Old personnel files stacked in boxes, gathering dust. I found my file. Opened it. My original benefits enrollment was gone. In its place, a newer version. Different terms. Different coverage. Dated 3 months ago, right after Emma's diagnosis. They'd rewritten my policy. Forged new paperwork. Covered their tracks. My hands trembled as I photographed both versions with my phone. One showed the coverage I'd signed up for. One showed the lie they'd created. If they'd forged this, what else had they falsified? I started looking deeper. The vendor payments caught my eye first. I'd processed enough purchase orders over the years to know what normal looked like. This wasn't normal. Ryder Logistics Consulting. Monthly payments ranging from $15,000 to $40,000. Listed as operational consulting services. No address. No point of contact. Just a routing number. I pulled up the corporate registry database. Searched for Ryder Logistics Consulting. Nothing. The company didn't exist. But that routing number looked familiar. I cross-referenced it against executive compensation records I'd filed last year. It matched Douglas Kearney's personal banking information. He was paying himself through a fake vendor. Probably avoiding taxes. Definitely committing fraud. My anger transformed into something colder. More focused. This wasn't just about my insurance anymore. I spent the next week digging through every financial record I could access. Expense reports. Vendor invoices. Payment histories going back 3 years. Emma asked why I was working so late. I told her I was busy with a special project. That wasn't exactly a lie. The pattern emerged slowly. Dozens of suspicious vendors. All registered to post office boxes or virtual offices. All receiving regular payments for vague services. Redline was bleeding money through fraudulent channels. Money that should have gone to taxes, to employee benefits, to the healthcare coverage they'd denied my wife. I created a spreadsheet. Tracked every payment, every fake vendor, every suspicious transaction. The total climbed past $2 million. I saved everything to an encrypted folder. Backed it up to a personal email account. Then I kept searching. Louise from accounting pulled me aside one morning. "Ryan, you okay?" Louise asked quietly. "You look exhausted." We were in the break room. I poured bad coffee and tried to look normal. "Just stressed about some personal stuff." He glanced around. "Be careful, man." Valerie asked IT to check network access logs. She thinks someone's poking around in files they shouldn't be. My blood went cold. Did they find anything? Not yet. But she's paranoid. People have been fired for less. I nodded slowly. Thanks for the warning. That afternoon, I moved all my evidence off the company network. Created new dummy accounts. Encrypted everything twice. Sent backup copies to 3 different email addresses, labeled as vacation forms and training materials. If they were watching, I'd be invisible. If they were hunting, they'd find nothing. The quiet war had begun in earnest now. Douglas called an all-hands meeting that Friday. The conference room packed with employees, everyone wearing fake smiles and mandatory enthusiasm. Record profits this quarter, he announced, grinning like a game show host. Thanks to tight cost control and operational efficiency. Cost control. That meant denied insurance claims and slashed benefits while he funneled money to fake companies. "We're a family here," Valerie added, standing beside him. "We take care of our own." I looked around the room. People nodding. Clapping. Nobody questioning the lies. Trent sat in the back row. Our eyes met. He looked away quickly. After the meeting, he cornered me by the elevator. "Just drop it," he whispered. "Whatever you're thinking about doing. It's not worth it." I pressed the button. The doors opened. "I'm not thinking about anything." "Good," he said. "Keep it that way." The doors closed and I smiled for the first time in weeks. Luis connected me with his cousin over the weekend. Former IRS auditor, now working as an independent CPA. We met at a diner 30 miles outside town. I spread my files across the booth. Showed him everything. The fake vendors. The routing numbers. The pattern of payments. He whistled low. "This isn't small-time fraud. They're moving revenue completely off the books. Can you help me build a case?" He studied the documents. "Build a timeline. Show the pattern. Don't accuse anyone directly. Just present the facts and let the evidence speak." I spent the next 2 weeks doing exactly that. Every payment documented. Every signature traced. Every lie catalogued with dates and amounts. The timeline grew to 40 pages. Undeniable. Devastating. Emma asked why I was staying up so late. I told her I was working on something important. That we'd be okay soon. She squeezed my hand. "I trust you." That trust kept me going through the long nights. Redline announced a surprise internal audit in early October. "Routine compliance check," the email said. "To ensure we're meeting all regulatory standards." I knew what it really meant. They suspected someone had found something. They were trying to clean up before anyone official came looking. So I fed them exactly what they wanted to see. Sanitized reports. Clean data. Everything looking perfectly normal on the surface. Meanwhile, the real evidence stayed hidden in encrypted files they'd never find. Valerie smiled at me in the hallway one morning. Audit's going smoothly. Everyone's being so cooperative. That's great, I said. I'm always happy to help. Her smile widened. I knew you were a team player, Ryan. I smiled back and kept walking. That afternoon, I sent a carefully worded email to the IRS whistleblower office. Subject line, corporate misreporting and document fraud. I didn't include accusations. Just questions. Just enough to make them curious. 3 weeks later, 2 men in dark suits arrived at the office. They showed badges. IRS Criminal Investigation Division. Routine compliance review, the taller one said. We'll need access to your financial records for the past 3 years. Douglas laughed it off. Of course. We've got nothing to hide. Right, Valerie? But Valerie didn't laugh. Her face had gone pale. Her hands trembled slightly as she shook their hands. I watched from my cubicle, pretending to work on spreadsheets. The agents set up in the conference room. Boxes of files got wheeled in. By lunch, the mood had shifted. Executives whispered behind closed doors. Valerie snapped at her assistant. Trent looked like he might throw up. The agents requested additional documents. Specific vendor records. Payment authorizations. Bank routing information. Everything I'd already sent them through the whistleblower portal. The trap was closing. That night, Valerie called an emergency meeting with department heads. I wasn't invited, but Luis was. He texted me after. She's ordering people to clean old files. Delete anything that looks questionable. She's panicking. Too late. The IRS already had everything. The real records. The evidence they couldn't erase. I sat in my car in the parking lot, watching lights burn late in the executive offices. Watching them scramble. Emma called. When are you coming home? Soon, I said. It's almost over. 3 days later, the IRS agents returned with warrants. They seized computers. Froze bank accounts. Escorted Douglas and Valerie out of the building. The office descended into chaos. People crying. Phones ringing constantly. Nobody knowing what was happening. I kept my head down. Stayed quiet. Watched the empire crumble. Douglas stormed back into the office 2 days later, his face purple with rage. He'd been released pending investigation, but the damage was done. Who leaked this? He shouted in the middle of the main floor. Who talked to the IRS? Silence. Everyone stared at their desks. His eyes scanned the room. When they landed on me, I held his gaze. Didn't look away. Didn't flinch. You should have read the fine print, I said quietly. His jaw dropped. The connection clicked in his mind. The denied insurance claim. The analyst who'd been asking too many questions. The investigation that appeared right after I'd been pushed aside. You, he whispered. I stood up. Gathered my things. I don't work for people who let employees' families die to pad their own accounts. The office stayed silent as I walked out. Nobody tried to stop me. The investigation moved fast once it started. Federal agents interviewed everyone. Accountants combed through years of records. The local news picked up the story. Logistics company under investigation for tax fraud. I watched from home as the details emerged. Fake vendors. Shell companies. Millions in unreported income. Insurance fraud. Falsified employee records. Everything I'd found and more. Luis called. They fired Valerie. Douglas resigned. The board's bringing in crisis management. What about everyone else? Most people are keeping their jobs. Companies getting restructured under new ownership. I felt no satisfaction. No triumph. Just exhaustion. Emma sat beside me on the couch. Is it over? Almost, I said. The next day, a lawyer called. The company wanted to settle. Full reimbursement for Emma's surgery. Plus damages. Plus legal fees. They want this to go away quietly, the lawyer explained. No, I said. I want them to admit what they did. The settlement conference happened in a bland conference room downtown. Douglas and Valerie weren't there. Just lawyers. Lots of lawyers. They offered money. Silence. A clean slate. I pushed a folder across the table. This is every fraudulent payment I documented. Every forged document. Every lie. The head lawyer paled as he flipped through it. If you don't pay Emma's bills in full, admit to insurance fraud, and cooperate with the IRS investigation, this goes to the press. All of it. Silence. We'll need to discuss this with our clients. You have 24 hours, I said, and left. They called the next morning. Full agreement. Emma's surgery covered. The company would pay additional damages. They'd admit to improper insurance practices. And the IRS case would move forward. The final IRS ruling came down 6 months later. I was back at work by then, at a smaller firm across town. Better pay. Actual benefits. People who treated employees like humans. The news alert popped on my phone during lunch. Redline Logistics fined $1.2 million for tax evasion and insurance fraud. Douglas and Valerie faced criminal charges. The company was being sold. New management. Complete restructuring. I showed Emma the article that night. She was healthy now, her surgery successful, her recovery complete. You did this, she said quietly. They did it to themselves. I just turned on the lights. She squeezed my hand. Thank you for fighting. I thought about all those late nights. The fear. The anger. The slow, careful gathering of evidence. I couldn't let them win, I said. I drove past the Redline building one last time a few weeks later. Half the parking lot was empty. The sign had been taken down. A banner read under new management. I didn't feel triumphant. Just tired. And grateful it was over. Louise texted me that afternoon. New owners are cleaning house. Trent got fired. Most of the old executive team is gone. How's everyone else? Honestly? Relieved. The culture was toxic. People are actually hopeful now. I smiled. Maybe something good would come from the wreckage after all. That night, I sat on our porch with Emma. The summer air was warm. Lightning bugs flickered in the yard. Do you regret it? She asked. Fighting them like that? I thought about it. No. They needed to face consequences. What if they'd won? They couldn't, I said. Because I had the truth. And the truth doesn't lose. Not forever. My new job was everything Redline wasn't. Transparent. Fair. Actually cared about employees. When people asked why I'd left my old company, I kept it simple. Philosophical differences. Nobody pushed. Corporate politics were universal. Everyone had their own stories. But sometimes new coworkers would mention seeing the news about Redline. About the fraud case. The executive arrests. Crazy what was going on there, they'd say. You must have dodged a bullet leaving when you did. I'd just nod. Right place, right time. Only Luis knew the full story. We still met for lunch sometimes. You know they're teaching your case in business ethics classes now, he said one afternoon. Whistleblower case study. How one person brought down corporate fraud. That felt strange. I'd never thought of myself as a whistleblower. Just someone who refused to be silent. Emma started painting again. Something she'd given up during her illness. The house filled with color. With life. I was so scared, she admitted one evening. When the hospital bills came. When you said there were problems with insurance. I was scared too. But you never showed it. You just kept saying you'd fix it. I pulled her close. Because I had to believe I could. Otherwise, I'd have given up. She kissed my forehead. You're stubborn. Yeah. And brave. I don't know about that. I do, she said firmly. That night, I thought about what bravery actually meant. It wasn't charging into battle. It was sitting at a laptop at 3 in the morning, gathering evidence. It was facing powerful people with nothing but the truth. It was refusing to accept that might makes right. Maybe that was enough. A year after everything ended, I got a letter from the IRS. A check. Whistleblower reward. 15% of what the government recovered. $180,000. I stared at it for a long time. Blood money, in a way. Payment for exposing corruption. Emma and I talked about what to do with it. Save it, she said. For emergencies. For the future. We did. Put most of it away. But we also donated some to a healthcare advocacy group. People fighting insurance denials. Fighting the same battles we'd faced. If our pain could help someone else, maybe it meant something. I framed the Redline news article. Hung it in my home office. Not as a trophy. As a reminder. The reminder that silence protects the guilty. That ordinary people can fight back. That justice sometimes happens when you refuse to quit. These days, life is quiet. Normal. Emma is healthy. I like my job. We're planning a vacation next summer. Sometimes I think about Douglas and Valerie. About Trent and all the others who'd looked the other way. About the system that let them hurt people until someone finally said no. I don't hate them anymore. I just feel sorry for them. They'd had everything and thrown it away for greed. But mostly, I don't think about them at all. New coworkers sometimes ask for advice. How to handle bad situations. How to deal with unfair treatment. I tell them the truth. Document everything. Trust yourself. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And sometimes I add. The people who seem powerful are often the most afraid. Because they have the most to lose. Last week, Emma and I visited the park where we had our first date. 12 years ago now. Before Redline. Before everything. We've been through a lot, she said, holding my hand. Yeah. Do you wish things had been different? I thought about it. I wish you'd never gotten sick. I wish the company had done the right thing. But I don't regret fighting. Good, she said. Because I'm proud of you. We watched the sunset paint the sky orange and gold. Families played nearby. Dogs chased frisbees. Life happening all around us. I'd learned something through all of it. That you don't need to be powerful to make a difference. You just need to be stubborn enough not to quit. Brave enough to stand up. And willing to turn on the lights. The rats scatter on their own after that.